Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month on the USA EBN site, as well as following that on the YouTube site. My name is Andre. I'm with USA Emergency Broadcasting Network, and I'm delighted to welcome to the show once again Nancy from ZetaTalk.com. Welcome back, Nancy.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. We're talking about a very important subject, the Earth wobble and all the proofs. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit thezetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on the YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. We're talking about the Earth wobble today, something that set in 2004 and has become increasingly measurable by the common man, and I'm going to discuss all the ways it's showing up. Proof that we've got a daily wobble going on, and no, we are not talking about some strange 26,000 year something or other that people will bring up, that there's this is a daily figure 8 wobble caused by Nibiru. In early 2004, when the Zetas first described an Earth wobble caused by the presence of Nibiru, there was scant evidence. In the opinion of the Zetas, Nibiru was tugging and pushing on magnetic spots on the surface of the Earth, producing this daily wobble. There was stress on the globe, which began enduring a twice-a-day global shudder that registered on the seismographs. In the opinion of the Zetas, this was caused by the big bully magnet, Nibiru, grabbing at the magnified Atlantic rift. I, Nancy, began measuring where the sun rose and set, how high it was in the dome, and when sunrise and sunset occurred, the timing. I had a team of over a dozen trusted captains around the world, registering the azimuth and altitude. This is of record in the orbits section of Zeta Talk. A distinct figure 8 emerged and has remained to the present day in observations. Now, at first, the pushing and pulling was on the Atlantic Rift, which starts at Iceland and goes down to South America, down to the tip of South Africa, like a big S. And that's actually where the continents have pulled apart and magma has hardened under the influence of a passage of Nibiru, causing that hardening magma to be magnetized. And therefore, it's like a surface magnet. And so when the globe turned and the Atlantic Rift was facing Nibiru, there would be a grab and a tug, because magnets like to hang on to each other and go end to end, as any child knows, playing with magnets. So this is the original daily wobble, and you could see it go this way and that way, and it was kind of and the globe, when it got grabbed and freed, it would the seismographs all over the world would go, and this would happen at 12-hour intervals around the globe. The entire globe would go. Well, then the USGS quickly set that back and desensitized those seismographs. But it's still going on, but it just doesn't record. I mean, it's not of record. It's not recording. So, and then it moved to become a situation where it was more of a polar push as Nibiru grew closer. it began with its magnetic north pole to push our magnetic north pole, and that would be when it swung around. It's now sort of like not so much in northern Canada as over Siberia. So when that would roll around and that part of the globe was getting ready to have a dawn, when the sun was going high over the central Pacific, there would be our magnetic north pole on the surface, and it would get a push away. Now, boy, does this show up on weather charts and the like, where the hot and cold sections of the globe are. So it became a polar push, but in 2004, it was a South Atlantic S grab. The Inuit Indians observed something going on in the Arctic. It was too sunny. In 2010, a Canadian documentary featuring these reports of the Inuit who live and work in the Arctic was titled Knowledge and Climate Change. The Inuit reported they were seeing too much of the sun, thus the ice was softening and melting. The Inuit said the sun seems higher now than years gone past. The heat of the sun seems to be getting hotter sooner, and the tilting of the earth changes everything. They said, if our world has shifted or has tilted north, that's what I wonder about. This is all documentation on the Zeta Talk website, but there's more than just this verbal report of the Indians. Wait until we get to what webcams can detect. Webcams sit there and record 24 hours a day, usually, day after day, and they often have archives so that you can go back and say, oh, well, at 6:30 in the morning on other days, has the same thing happened? Because there are the archives. Well, somebody sent me a video and said from Selawik, Atlanta, Selawik, up there in Alaska, which is very north. It's not like Anchorage. It's not like the Aleutian Islands. It's up there past the Bering Straits, so it's pretty far north. They have an FAA webcam for pilots to see the weather, and if at midnight, here's the sun rising, and it's up there for 2 hours, just above the horizon, then goes back down. Now, mind you, you shouldn't be able to see the sun at that time at midnight from Selawik. You know, that's what, if you look in planetarian programs or SkyMap or the like, that's what it shows you. It's below the horizon. But from that position in Alaska, you are looking over the North Pole toward Europe, and over Europe, the sun is high at that time. Well, the globe is tilted, and so therefore we're seeing the sun, and so are the Inuit Indians, and so is the melting Arctic ice getting too much sun. Not only do you see the sun coming up because of the wobble, but you get a glorious capture of Nibiru with its two shoulder pads, moon swirls on either side. Usually, look, it's a little orb. It's kind of fuzzy. It's pinkish looking, and it's got the shoulder pads, and there it is to the right of the sun as it comes up and then goes back down. Okay. Alaska. Let's see. I talked about that. This is all done.
Nancy, what website do you know which website? Was that an FAA website for the Selawik cam in particular? Because I know that one. Okay, good. Sorry.
I was just going to say, go to newsletter 509 on the Zeta Talk website, and you will find a link, direct link to that FAA. Okay. Well, actually, it's to all the webcams, but it's Selawik, Selawik. It may appear on others, but it's glory. And the thing is, it was very confusing to me when I first saw this video because it was a north-facing webcam, and I said, how can it be seeing the sun and Nibiru when it's facing almost dead north? And then I realized it was looking over the North Pole to where the sun is shining away over there in Europe. So it took a little while for me to get my head around that because the clues were confusing. In Denver, from a Denver webcam, We could compare sunrise photos in 2008 to 2013 for the same date and time. Somebody did this, went back to look at some of these webcams that were showing very clear pictures looking for changes. One can see that the sun is higher in the sky and further south as time goes on. In other words, in that 5-year period between 2008 and 2013, there was a change. The figure 8 wobble tilted the globe to the left, so the sun was rising earlier and was higher in the dome. And you can see that on where it shines and the shadow, you know, how far the shadows go and the depth of the shadow. It just, what the sunrise hit, instead of going over the mountains and just hitting the top of the building, boom, you know, it's hitting lower down. You can count the floors. These things are really obvious. So this is not your imagination. You're actually seeing the sun higher in the sky and hitting these buildings earlier. The jet stream. Then there's the undulating jet stream, which of course responds to the figure 8 swings as the globe is moving under her blanket of air, and the blanket is getting rumpled. In 2006, a twisted jet stream emerged over the continental U.S., and by 2010 was entirely inverted. What I mean by that is, when it comes in over the U.S., usually it hits the West Coast, and it dives down like a V to Texas, and then back up to the New England areas, and then out. The V goes down over the continental U.S. It was doing something different. It was hitting the West Coast. It was going up into Canada, you know, and finally coming down a little bit before it hit New England. It just totally atypical. Or it'll come into the U.S., go up into Canada, and take a complete plunge, vertical line all the way through Canada down to like the Texas area. And, you know, just bizarre behavior. Okay, the equator. In 2016, there was panic in the weatherman kingdom. Headlines were screaming that there was a global emergency because this was just this last year, a couple months ago. The jet stream was recorded crossing the equator. In 2010, this issue came up due to ocean currents amiss. Algae blooms found under the ice in the Arctic, pushed there by the weather wobble. And they went nuts. They said, you know, the jet stream is never supposed to cross the equator because of the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect is, for those unfamiliar, as the globe turns from west to east, you know, it's pushing under the atmosphere, which curls away because the fat part of the globe is the equator. And above the equator, the air curls back as the globe moves under it to the east, curls back and turns around in a clockwise manner in a big circle, and then it returns again. And now south of the equator, it does the opposite. It gets pushed back, but it curls around in a counterclockwise manner, big circles, and returns. And that is the Coriolis. Regular, you know, then you go into the trade winds and all that jazz. But anyway, it's supposed to affect either north of the equator or south of the equator, and the jet stream follows all that. It's affected too. It's not supposed to go across the equator. So when it did, everybody said, what does this mean? They were showing it from the northern hemisphere, and in one of these wibbly-wobbly, misbehaving inverted jet stream things, it went right across the equator and zoomed down into the southern, you know, hemisphere. And it was like, now what? Well, as we can tell, Andre and I were talking just before the show started, all the rain, we know the rain in Texas, the terrible rainstorms in China, and now Ellicott City in Maryland practically washed away. It's just practically gone.
Right.
What was it? 6 inches of rain in 2.5 hours. Wasn't that it? Something huge.
They called it a downburst, but nobody was ready for it because nobody's ready for it.
Nobody expected
it. It's a flash flood, and it was.
Yeah.
But that's happening all over the globe in strange areas like Yemen this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, they get rain there? I didn't. Okay, now they do.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, and snow in places. We had snow in summer and bizarre weather and deluge and intractable droughts, etc. And and yes, if they went into a panic over the jet stream crossing the equator and said this is doom, doom, well, to some degree they were right. And a heat dome. Here's another. The wobble recently hit the news due to extreme heat called a heat dome in the U.S., while both the central U.S. and Alaska are broiling, as is Europe in most cases, not just this year either. Quebec and Russia's Far East are cooler than normal. I've been watching this on Weather Underground maps of the globe, for a long time, and I've got a lot of examples in my newsletters. You can see this. Here's Europe, way warm, all the way up to, the tip of the top part of Sweden or whatever, and then you go across Russia and you go over to their Far East or Siberia, above China, and the like, which is on the same latitude, right? And it's just really cold. Now you get to Alaska, baked Alaska, it's all so warm, and as is the West Coast, and you march across the United States, and Quebec, and around Hudson Bay, very cold. You can see this hot, cold, and divided into eighths. And is that the figure eight wobble? Oh yes, because what it does is it goes a polar push, the North Pole pushed away, then it leans to the right with all those temperate regions, sort of in a more tropical area than they would normally be. Then it swings woo and leans to the left with more temperate areas under the tropical sun, and then it goes woo and bounces back, so the North Pole is toward the sun, as the Inuit Indians know, and then we start it all over again with push it away. So that's the figure eight. Okay. And it's fascinating. Just go check until they take it away. And when some of these things show the wobble or show what's going on or show pictures of Nibiru, they get taken down. You just don't get it anymore. And they've done that with USGS. They've modified the quakes to show that they're less severe than they are, or stripped out where they could, so that if you ran statistics, an Excel spreadsheet up on the statistics, it would not seem that there's a frequency increase, but there is. And the Zetas have said, in the opinion of Zetas, quakes are almost 2 full magnitudes below what they really are. So where we had a 7.7, I think was that in somewhere recently, I believe it was Mariana Islands, yes. Boom.
Mariana.
It was probably a 9, and can't prove that. The one thing you can look for is to see how many buildings fall down and the scope of because magnitude is not only vumpo, how hard the thrust is, but how vast in square miles the effect was felt. And so they're lying to you. It's a lot worse. Alrighty.
Well, as far as the wobble goes, too, I used to hear, like 3 or 4 years ago, I used to hear reference to the wobble on the Weather Channel, and a little bit more on Weather Underground. They would call it the weather wobble, and that was before the jet stream started going crazy, too. So, and that, even if you look up that, like, there's some, savvy folks on YouTube that catch that stuff and put it up there, mentioning the wobble and things of that nature. Even those YouTubes are taken down. You go back to the website for the Weather Channel for that day, for that particular weather or that particular segment of their reporting, and that's gone too. I mean,
yeah.
Somebody doesn't want you to know.
They don't want you to know. They're trying to keep it quiet. There are people who have a vested interest in you paying. If you live on the coastline, they want you paying your mortgage and not panicking. Mm-hmm. And they do not want you to correlate what you're seeing with Zeta talk either. That's always been a problem. I'm internationally known. Zeta Talk is internationally known, but they're so accurate, and the like. When people find that and they realize, that it's answering all their vague questions that nobody else is answering, then they're stuck and they become a fan, and so they don't want you to find Zeta Talk. They want you to pay your mortgage. They want you to stay calm, assume that nothing's going to happen. Don't try to pull your money out of the bank. Don't quit your jobs. Don't go off and have chickens and goats and have a garden at Uncle Bob's farm. It's a control mechanism by the very wealthy and powerful elite. Yes, and don't we know it? Then you find that with the magnetosphere, where we used to be able to read the variations very readily, and then it got switched to be, a reading of something else. So it becomes more difficult. You still get the pattern, but you don't get it in an obvious manner. And it's, it's basically unfair
really
because why doesn't the common man have a right to know? These are public funds.
Well, that's the thing. It only affects the common man. Those folks that have the information have already made the preparations and dug their bunkers and made their deals with whoever they need to make their deals with. And we're doing it for everybody else, I guess.
That's right. The taxpayer, the little guy, doesn't get to know.
Yeah.
Because, you can't handle that knowledge. What that means is you can't handle it without adversely affecting the assets of the wealthy. All right, here's another example of the Earth Wobble, documentation. The Earth Orientation Center. What the heck is that? This is a website maintained by a French observatory, and in essence is showing what constellation the North Pole is pointing at. Under normal circumstance, because the Earth goes around the sun, and with the 365 days or whatever the heck, there is a slight circle. Is pointing, because we have a tilt of 23 degrees. So we're tilted away and go around the sun. So, we don't point to the same constellation during the year. That's normal. Well, that circle has been getting wider and wider and wider, meaning that the North Pole, according to this observatory, and this is not some wacky-do, this is a French observatory, scientifically based, is pointing to constellations, further out, not so much up or down, but out to the side. And it's dramatic. I have several examples of that. They haven't taken it down yet to my knowledge, but you can go in and check with my newsletters or use the search engine on my website and get there in a hurry. So, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I described that, Earth orientation. Okay, the Earth's orientation is defined as the rotation from the Earth crust, I'm quoting here, the terrestrial system to a geocentric set of axes tied to the quasars, the geocentric celestial system, to be distinguished from the reference celestial system having for origin the barycenter of the solar system. Clear as mud, right? Essentially, it's what constellation that North Pole points to, and it is not so much up anymore as it is further to the side, to the side, to the side. Okay. Mexican webcams, a delight. The wobble also shows up on a Mexican webcam where a repeated sunset has been captured on multiple occasions. By that I mean the sun goes down, then it comes up again, then it goes down again, and there it is. On July 6, 2016, the west-facing cam caught the sun setting between two hills, as expected. The sunball is fully visible at 8:11, and the afterglow is visible at this location until 8:37. But moments later, at 8:41, the glow seems to shift to the south and then brightens, so that from 8:44 to 8:56, the sunball can be seen again, but this time in a region further south of the first setting. This dual sunset is due to the Earth wobble, which is in the process of allowing the Earth's north pole to bounce back into position, swinging south at this point. It totally fits with the figure 8 and what's going on at that moment. So, this dual sunset was captured also in 2013 in an east-facing cam. And this was looking at clouds up in the sky. First you see the sun goes down. First the sun is shining on the clouds, because the sun from the west shining on the clouds to the east. The cam is facing east. Okay, very bright clouds. Well, now they dim. Obviously the sun went down. Whoops, wait a minute. Now the clouds brighten up again, and so does the scene. And minutes later, boom, total darkness. So I've got the times. The sun sets by 6:40, no longer shining on the cloud bank. Then at 6:56, the sunlight reappears, brightening the cloud bank. But not 12 minutes later, at 7:08, the bank is plunged into darkness. So it's not as dramatic as looking at that, spot out there in the sky where you can actually see where the sun bowl is that comes back up. Now, there are people who have recorded this, and people always say, oh, it's fraud. He doesn't know what he's doing, this kind of discounting, but you can go and look at some of these webcams yourself. Seeing the sun out of place is one of the best personal confirmations that the Earth wobble exists. Alberto documented his observations in Italy this past March in 2016, noting that the setting sun was located at azimuth 222 when it should have been at azimuth 255. This is way, way too far to the southwest by a full 33 degrees. What the heck is azimuth? You know how they say 360 degrees around? North is 0, east is 90, south is 180, direct west 270, and then you go up to 360, which is the north, or i.e. 0. Well, usually the sun sets in the west somewhere around 270, or it's a little bit to the southwest, and so he recorded that, and he knows what he's doing. Let's put it that way. Dubai, another similar observation from Dubai, accompanied by photos showing the sunset too far to the southwest compared to where it should be at this time of year in February 2016. This was somebody who noted that. They said the sun should be setting there, but it's over there. And they sent pictures with arrows and stuff like that showing how far, but it does match up with what Alberto was seeing. An aware Wisconsinite also notes that the sunrise is out of place, being too far to the south by as much as 20 degrees. That's the sunrise, as well as up to 17 minutes late. So, it depends on where you live and what's going on with the figure 8 wobble for your sunrise and sunset. And you can determine this, folks, by determining a north, south, east, west. Do not use the compass, which is whacked out these days. The magnetic North Pole has shifted over more toward Siberia, and so the compass, your reading won't be correct. But old surveys are great. They always show true north. And in the Midwest, I know we have street grids that north, south, east, west the streets are laid out by that. So not so much in the southeast. I remember when I lived in Atlanta, it was like they just paved over the cow paths, but they wandered all over the place. But in Midwest cities, it's east, so if you can find a survey or a grid line in a city that is laid out, use that as a guide. And then you go in and you find out where is the sun supposed to rise and what time of day and setting also, and just see the difference for yourself. And why would that be? You go to an observatory or to the weatherman or something, and you get hemming and hawing and the door slammed in your face. We'll get back to you. That type of thing. Yes. Well, folks, this is my lecture on wobble proofs, things that you can see yourself, check yourself, webcams, personal observation, the Earth Orientation Center, etc. And it's not just the Inuit Indians. You can see that on the Selawik webcam, the FAA weathercam. So it's real. It's causing weather anomalies. flooding. Because when the Earth, and it happens very rapidly, people who have observed a movement, it's not like there's a slow figure. No, it's kind of like, and then, and people have said they've seen the moon move across the sky.
Right, I was just going to mention.
And they've laid on their back. I got email from one guy saying, out in the desert with his daughter and laying on their back, looking at the sky, and they saw the moon. There it goes. Or people have said the shadow will move. They'll be standing and they see within a shadow in a building, waiting for a ride to pick them up in New York City, and all of a sudden the shadow goes several inches. So this type of thing, it's fairly rapid. And sometimes you can catch that or get reports of that. One guy caught it on film, the moon moving. He was out there taking chicka pictures, and you can see how they do streaking to indicate motion. That's what the moon was doing. It was streaking at some points, and it was time stamping his photos. So that you could tell by the objects in the photo how rapidly the moon had moved and where it started at and where it moved to. So this is all wobble stuff. And what happens to the blanket of air, the atmosphere, is as the Earth moves, but the air does not. Instead, what you get is winds, or you get roiling of the atmosphere, or you get that type of thing. The weatherman has a heck of a time trying to predict the weather. They don't even try many times, but it's because of that, because they are not taking this into consideration. To my knowledge, they haven't taken it into consideration. So it's going to get worse.
Another fact that's out there, too, is we're on a 3-year drought for Gulf of Mexico hurricanes, too. I mean, there's been a hurricane in the Gulf in 2.5 years at least. I named one. I mean, that's odd, right? Isn't that odd?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that in tornadoes, I know here in Wisconsin we don't have tornadoes, except now we do. And we have trees tossed, ripped up by their roots, tossed around. It's because tornadoes are appearing in odd places. Like you said, the hurricanes the season is all wacky-doo. And drought and deluge, increasingly worse. This is not going to change. It's only going to get worse. And the Zetas recently came out and emphasized that there are different types of effects of the wobble. I have been talking about the good old figure 8 that you can predict that shows up on weather charts and etc. But because this is a dance of two big magnets bobbling around in the sky, and they draw close, they push apart, they move a little bit this way and that way. The Earth is stuck. It's trying to align with the sun. And the sun has static magnetic alignment. North is up, south is down. Don't listen to anybody say there's a polar flip every 11 years. That is not true. NASA's own Ulysses probe showed that. It went by and said, north is up, south is down, and then it went by 7 years later and said, north is, and they established that there had been no change, even though NASA was announcing that the poles had flipped. And it turns out that the only way that they make that determination or come to that conclusion is that there's an appearance of blippity-bloopiting on the surface of the sun, and they say, there it is, the poles are flipping. Well, in other words, they made it up, like the flat Earth, So even though their own probe told them it was otherwise, they're still saying that the poles flip, but they don't. So the sun has up and down. The Earth is trying to be up and down with the sun. So is Mercury, and other planets that align with the sun. And here comes Nibiru, which has a mind of its own. It's a huge magnet. It's 23 times as massive as Earth. The diameter is only 4 to 5 times the diameter of Earth, but it's a big, massive, weighty guy, very, big magnet. And it is, for whatever reason, pointing its north pole outward, toward us. So it's like getting socked in the side of the Earth is struggling with that. It's awash with magnetons. You can see this on the Earth's magnetosphere, where there was years ago, this is in my newsletters, if you type in the search engine, hole in the bow shock, you'll find it in a jiffy, of the Earth. And the scientists were quoting, they can't figure out why there's a hole in the bow shock just to the south of the midline, which is the equator. Well, that's exactly where Nibiru is coming from and pointing at our bow shock, and therefore we grapple with this flood of magnetons that is not normal for Earth. Well, what does the Earth do when it's flooded like that? It can. The last weeks are an example of how bad it gets. 7.3 weeks before the pole shift, in the opinion of the Zetas, because it hasn't happened yet. The first thing that happens is a severe lean to the left. Our North Pole goes directly, flops over on its side and points to the left, and then it starts flopping right and left as a reaction. And then the North Pole flops away from the Sun and the approaching planet X, Nibiru rather, into 3 days of darkness. It keeps going because its momentum and almost turns upside down, which is documented in the Islamic hadiths. The Earth turns upside down so that there's sunrise west for 6 days. Then it rights itself, but now it's slowly slowing its rotation to a stop over a period of days. And then for 5.9 days, there we are stuck with the Atlantic Rift facing the Sun and the approaching Nibiru. And then there's the hour of the pole shift as Nibiru flies overhead and goes on its way out of the solar system. Okay, so those are the contortions. Flop to the left, flop to the right, go flop away into 3 days of darkness, turn upside down, and slow to a stop. Okay, so figure 8, on occasion, we will have some of that flopping around, and have. We've had what they call going into opposition, which means that they try to align with the magnetosphere of Nibiru that is pointing its north pole at us by pointing our north pole directly at it, and somehow with the way magnetons flow. It's all explained on the Zeta Talk website. I just don't have it handy. But the bottom line is the northern hemisphere gets too much sun altogether. Or we can point away and have sort of a brief 3 days of darkness. Not that it's the last weeks, but that can happen where it's too much darkness and the sun is way, if we even get it at all, barely showing up on the southern horizon. Or we can start flopping to the right and to the left and get a lean to the left, brief. These things can happen, and we should be braced for that. That doesn't mean we're in the last weeks. What the Zetas have said is that they've laid out many steps that are to happen before the pole shift. The 7 of 10 plate movements. We haven't had a new Madrid adjustment, which has to happen in the plate adjustments. We haven't had Africa shifting and rolling to the east so that Gibraltar is an extra 125 miles and the Sinai is an extra 50 miles apart from other land masses. These are part of the 7 of 10. So therefore, we have a ways to go. And it's not the last weeks until it fits exactly what they described for the 7.3 weeks. Go read it, look it up, print it off, and be reassured that you're not in the last weeks if you're not. But don't think you have a lot of time, because things could get very chaotic. As Ellicott City noted, you can have rain suddenly washing you away. Suddenly in Venezuela, they're having starvation because the government under Chavez, it was run well, and now it's not run well, and nobody's growing food, and everybody's rioting. So now I read they're having forced labor. So
right.
Even in a tropical country where there's plenty of water, good soil, people know what they're doing, and they're starving. How can this be? So now they have forced laborers. Pick up the hoe and get going. So things like this can happen, and you better go to Uncle Bob's farm, garden, get chickens and goats, or be prepared to do that, because you never know when things are going to heat up, and you're not going to want to be in your safe little existence along the coastline with your, video games and, baseball games or whatever. Life can change pretty quickly, and you should get ready.
Yeah, get your head out of the Pokemon Go game and get in the real game. Yeah.
Well said.
Well, another way to go too, instead of running up to, the uncle's land or the cabin, what we call bug out around here, the old bug out, you can also, we've got time yet, Nancy. We've got time to build relationships with people that are on the same kind of page as you are, or not you and I. I'm saying more of the general sense of people out there looking for answers. You can find some of the answers, obviously, where we talked about with the poleshift.ning.com and the Zeta Talk website and the USA EBN website. But really, if you want to get together a group, you have to kind of do it face to face with your neighbors or folks in the area, or if you go off someplace during the summer and have a relatively remote location where a lot of folks can hang out. I mean, these are the things. It sounds kind of like the hippie way to go, but I hate to label it that way. But it's kind of, you have to start thinking of the community as a little bit tighter, not necessarily your city or your state or the United States. Maybe it's just, these 5 families that live on this end of this block are going to, start growing and sharing food. And then if they already start practicing that, you already have those skills.
They do that. I think we did something about model communities a couple of months ago, and there was one, I can't remember the name of the city, was it Cleveland or something, and they had a whole street, ridge, houses and streets. They had chickens, free-ranging. They all had gardens. They had community gardens. They shared in the harvest and the like. And then they would have cookouts and dances and all this. And it was very community-oriented and very successful. When these things happen like this. Yeah, it should be with people that you're familiar with, not, vast numbers. If you, go on Craigslist and somebody says, looking for blah, 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 be leery of that, because there are opportunists that will try to take advantage of your panic. And people do panic. I get those emails. They say, what do I do? I just became aware, of this information. I have 3 children, and you got to sympathize. I mean, it's hit them like in the solar plexus, like a ton. And of course I can't, give a handheld tour, but I'm starting to get
Why
so
not?
much of it. What? There are 7 billion
say,
people, and I'm one little old lady,
Why not? There's a search tool on the poleshift.ning.com. You type in whatever you like.
And on the Zeta Talk website, a dedicated search tool. Yes, and you can go in and read the last 2 years' worth of newsletters and get it all. But what I am doing for this upcoming weekend newsletter is going through a refresher on survival. And boy, do I reference a lot of our Homeland Security shows, Andre. One after the other.
The FEMA website has a lot of great tools on it. People don't want to use it because of the name. Okay, well then go to ready.gov. That's the same site, but whatever.
Yeah, be weird and go to zetatalk.com. Look at, because I have the archives. You look at the interviews, and there are all our USA EBN interviews. The one I'm proudest of is the one, I think we did it in January, on vitamins in nature. And I really researched that because I didn't want to be leading people astray. You don't have any oranges, you don't have any vitamin bottle, what am I going to, oh man, it's all nature provides. Remember, we grew up on this globe. Our bodies are attuned to what the food that's available in nature. And you don't have to have a fancy diet either. You don't have to have apples and cherries and yada yada. Grow tomatoes, have pumpkins or winter summer squash, and grab some greens, just weeds along the side of the road or whatever, and you're nourished. It's bugs are great. They have a lot of B vitamins, high fat and protein. You don't have to have a fancy diet to survive, and you need to get the basics. So check my upcoming newsletter, this coming weekend, and because it's an overview and it references the pertinent Homeland Security. We went through how to make windmills out of car parts. You and I did, Andre.
Right, we did an off-grid show, yeah.
Yes. So that everything you might worry about is in there, and if you just get familiar with it and print it out and read it for a few times before you go to bed, so you dream the right dreams, and you will subconsciously be prepared when the time comes. And don't wait. Get going. You should be gardening in your backyard, in containers on your porch, in a community garden, learning how to grow seed and save seed. This is not something that you can do and just say, oh, it's a piece of cake, I'll figure it out. No. Some of this seed has to be fermented and dried, and the like. Some of it, because some plants, it has to be very ripened. Like the best thing to do with some summer squash is to let the darn thing rot, practically, and say, okay, I'm breaking it open and picking out the seeds and rinsing it off. Don't pick it when it's just fresh. They have to be mature seeds. The plants that have dry seed that you just go and shuck, those are the easy ones. But some of these, like lettuce, they fly away. They have these little fluffy things, and then you go out one day and whoops, the fluffy things have carried it away. So I used to go out and collect my lettuce. I'd come home from work and I'd go out and pick, and I would pick the fluffy things and put them, because it's mature. And some of these, you have to learn. You have to have experience. And the same thing with keeping chickens. It's not just, oh, aren't they cute? Toss them some whatever. There are things to learn. How you live with roosters. Roosters will attack you if they're not raised as virtually one of your chicks, because, and boy, does that hurt to have a rooster jump up and whang you in the kneecap with those talons, So I used to have to go in with a garbage can lid as a shield. You learn.
Yeah.
And one of the hens is the brooder, and will sit the eggs for all the others, and this is normal. So when you get to learn about these things and experience this, there's nothing like you can't, if you read it in a book, it just won't stick, and it's not just a piece of cake. You must go through those steps. Get started.
One question from the chat room, Nancy, in regard to the wobble and the worsening of the wobble. A lot of the folks out there on social media and on the interwebs, what have you, that are trying to fight the global warming conspiracy or hoax or what have you, will always note that Antarctica or the South Pole is building ice. But not at the same time will they ever mention that the North Pole or the Arctic is losing ice. And a lot of fresh water that's being introduced into the North Sea, and that's messing up with our weather as well. When you look at the wobble aspect of it, with the North Pole being moved back and forth in that figure eight, do you think that the building ice in the Antarctica is due to the wobble, or just the fact that it's reorienting?
Yes.
The poles are reorienting maybe already.
It is the wobble, and this was addressed in Zeta Talk, and I'm trying to remember the exact mechanics of that. But it's that the Arctic gets exposed to the sun during the wobble more than Antarctic, than the South Pole down there. And there was a whole Zeta Talk. If you go into the search engine and you type in Antarctic ice building, for instance, you'll ping right to, that particular Zeta Talk or newsletter. And I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. I shouldn't apologize. There's over 10,000 pages of Zeta Talk. It's been around for 20 years, and I usually remember. exactly where it is, but I do know we did something, and it was a newsletter feature also on that, and it is due to the wobble, and it was laid out, in that newsletter and by Zeta Talk. So, yeah, but they try to explain it. You're given the wackiest excuses for all of this.
Oh, yeah.
They. It was. I thought the wobble would be one that they would not be able to bullshit. Pardon me if I'm not allowed to say that. But
well, that's all right.
But they did. They did. They they said, oh, the North Pole is losing ice because of global warming, which doesn't exist either. And that's why we're top heavy, like a top that's going. They. Well, that's not true. That's not true. It was an excuse
that was their
for the wobble. Yeah, that was their explanation. That we have global warming that has melted the ice in the Arctic, and therefore we're lurching around essentially. So for a long time in the year 2000 or so, when they were anticipating Nibiru coming into the inner solar system, the Zetas had predicted 2003, and in it came. And there's all this documentation on my website about that, and you're being introduced to Nibiru or there, arriving in the inner solar system, and they're now closer to the sun than we are and getting ready for a passage. All this Planet 9 stuff, is, and looking for exoplanets, is trying to get the public ready for an admission that, it was there all the time, and we just didn't notice it because Wise and Hubble and Kepler, we looked so far out. We looked, it was right at our feet, and we were looking way out there, but the ESO, European Union Observatory in Chile has discovered exoplanets closer in, because it doesn't look way out, and all this kind of stuff now, because they know they can't deny it anymore. They're trying to educate the public and getting ready nervously to inform you, but meanwhile they wanted to blame the sun. So for the whole decade, from the year 2000 to almost the present, it's the solar radiation is going to blast the Earth. Then we would have these electromagnetic storms, blackouts, everything static on the radio, this kind of thing. I have trouble with my internet every morning for a few hours because Nibiru is passing over, it's to the right of the sun, and as it gets toward the zenith up there, and I anticipate that. And then there's some other time between 5 and 6 when there's a wobble move. When my satellite, does not connect, my dish does not connect with the satellite perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll have TV problems. So this is all the Earth wobble.
Satellite doesn't, the Earth thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So people have noted this, and they can time it, and it fits in with the Earth wobble. So they blamed the sun. They were saying, all this stuff is because the sun is blasting away. But they couldn't, and then we had a mild solar cycle. There were hardly any sunspots. It was like practically sunspot free. Very sleepy sun. Well, they didn't expect that, but that's what happened. And so what they would do is we would have an electromagnetic blast, a lot of magnetons, and after the fact they would say, there was something that happened on the sun. There was something that happened over there. They would try to line it up where they could predict ahead of time, but they never got it right. So God knows what they're going to say next, but they are trying desperately to confuse the common man, who they think is an idiot and out there can't put two and two together. If they tell you it's the sun, if they tell you that the North Pole is bobbling to the right and to the left because there's no ice up there, and if you see Nibiru in the sky, they're going to tell you it's light bending because of an atmospheric something or other big technical term that never existed before, but now it does, and you're not supposed to understand. And then if that doesn't work, they'll get Stephen Hawking's out there to say, brr, 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 and then everybody's supposed to go back to sleep and keep your job and pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
So you got to be discerning. You can go and check this stuff yourself.
Yeah, do the research. Research everything before you believe anything. And these websites that we're quoting are not just Zeta Talk and PulseShift.ning.com. We're also going to the FAA, that Selawik, Alaska webcam. That's an FAA cam. So
you betcha it is.
The truth's out there. You can always look up. A good one I like to look at is the observatory, or not an observatory, but it's an outpost in Antarctica. I forget the name of it, but they used to have some great webcam stuff. So now that the Wobble is a little bit different, Nibiru is not showing up in the southern hemisphere as much, but they have some great stuff down there. Nancy, we've got about 5 minutes left in the show. I do have a caller. Rhonda has a question for you if you want to take a caller. We got
absolutely
real quick.
You bet.
Thanks for calling Zeta Report. This is Andre and Nancy. How can we help you?
I just wanted to tell Nancy that I wanted to thank her so much for her work that she does, and that we are listening out here, and Andre, you too. I've been sharing all the information that you've put out, and finally I'm getting responses from many of my Facebook friends. And I just want to tell Nancy how much I really do listen to her and the Zetas, and you too, Andre. And I just want to let her know that, you know.
That's great to know. That's great to get that feedback, and I know that that's the case, that there are people, for everybody who throws tomatoes, there are people that say, oh, you know, this is wonderful because I've been thinking about what to do, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, and it's been my honor and to have this opportunity to do this with my life, and to be in a position.
Thank you so much.
And I get so much support. You know, it's a huge team. People everywhere are supporting each other, too.
Yes, they are.
The Earth is in a transformation. Good people supporting each other. Most of these people are unknown. You know, they work quietly, caring for others and helping others grow and get ready, get in position. Good for you, Rhonda.
Well, thank you again, and thank you, Andre.
Yeah, thanks for your support, Rhonda. And always, if anybody gives you any crap on the social media, get rid of them. If they're not resonating with you, get rid of them.
I know it. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too, hon.
Well,
Nancy, I also wanted to say that that's typical of what I hear on the social media from our websites too. That there's the people that want to throw the tomatoes and they don't stick around very long. They're usually trolls of some sort or government agents. I'm not sure how it works, but people that don't want the truth out there. And then there's folks like Rhonda who are quietly supporting and spreading the information and actually doing the research themselves. And that's great.
Yeah, it's like an underground internet railroad, really. It is. There's so much information, and it spreads like water. You can't get rid of it, because people save it on their home computers, and they print it off, and they share it with their friends and talk about it. It's not like it has one heart, and you can pierce that heart and it's gone, and it's been out there for quite some time. And they cannot get rid of it, so they try to distract and discredit and that type of thing, because wiping it out is not possible. And yes, if somebody tried to shoot me, the bullet would not arrive. That's something I've learned to trust, because someone said that. It was funny. 10 years ago, why isn't she dead? She's saying this stuff, and obviously there's somebody who doesn't
too crazy.
Want that. Yeah. Well, then, crazy like a... Yeah, but then there was a guy from Minnesota that posted and said that he was hired to come down and shoot me. And he had so much car trouble, he never did make it across the Mississippi. He had, I don't know what his car trouble was, but he said he got the message. He wasn't going to make it. Something was going to happen. So he just gave up, and he said, that's divine interference. So in any case... It's a huge team. It's a transformative effort. There's a lot of people working at it. And just because Andre and I are out here on the webcam doesn't mean, that we're the only ones. That so many good hearts, and they never do get it. They just know they're doing the right thing. They know they're helping other people. They just know it.
Well, that's what I was trying to make the point with Rhonda, too. If it resonates with you that it's something you should be doing, you should do it. And more often than not, it's the right thing for everybody, too. It's like more of a collective call that we're all embracing.
Yes, we are.
Well, that's. Yeah. I know this weekend we've got a. I want to say again that we've got Zeta Talk is doing a survival